taking your personal protection to the next level, or leveling up your concealed carry. Working title, but that's the synopsis of what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns, gunfighting tactics, ballistics, the right way with Almighty God at the center, biblical, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. On that, military, law enforcement, private security contracting. A lot of teaching and instruction in there. Urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps. F.B.I. instructor, professional firearms instructor, advanced weapons instructor for a bunch of different organizations, 3-letter government agency stuff. You can look at that bullet points in the show notes. God has blessed me and allowed me to do all those things, and I try and pass that real-world first-hand knowledge and experience on to you guys. That's why I do the podcast, help serve. But I think it's important that when you're listening to somebody, you listen to them for more than the fact that they just have a microphone. Like, what is the experience that they bring to the table? That's one of the big reasons I started the podcast. So with that, blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and fingers for battle. To him be all the credit. That said, there's going to be a little bit of tough love in this episode, so hopefully you can take criticism if the shoe fits. If it doesn't, you might just get a bunch of attaboys because you're doing the right things as pertaining to this episode. And for that, God Almighty at the center. This is not a shall. This is not one of the 10 commandments, right? Jesus said, "He who has no sword, let him sell his cloak and buy one." Then the disciples, there were 12, and there were 2 swords, and he said, "It is enough." So some men, I think were called, some of Jesus' disciples were carrying swords, some were not. So it's not a shall. But if you decide you are one of those ones that you feel called, and you should pray about it, read your Bible, and know God, know yourself, and know your weapon. But assuming you're one of those, which if you're listening to this, you likely are, or at least you're thinking about it, considering it. Concealed carry in America. I am glad that so many states now have concealed carry. When I started to become a concealed carry instructor a long time ago, it was nowhere near as common as it is today. If you've only come into firearms the last, decade or so, you might think, oh, concealed carry has always been a thing in America. Not really, not like it is today. And that's a great thing. But just from being around and a bunch of teaching and instructing and range master type stuff, let me describe to you, paint a picture of what I consider a fairly common scenario for the American concealed carrier. They get together, maybe a couple of buddies, and they go to an indoor range, and they put up a giant silhouette target, and they run it out to 3 yards, 5 yards, 7, maybe all the way to 7 yards, right? And they, fire a couple of rounds with a full-size fighting handgun, a nice handgun at those distances, and they get a couple of hits on a silhouette target. Maybe they're low left, right, because that's a classic sign of a flinch, but they're on the silhouette somewhere. And then they pat each other on the back, talk about guns, talk about whatever, how horrible the opposing political party is, blondes versus redheads. And then they pack up and go home. Maybe they do it again a couple of times a year. And then when they pack up that nice, expensive gun, they put a hashtag #MeToo gun in their pocket, just to check a box to say they have a gun on them. So they can be like, oh yeah, actually can still carry. They put in a Smith & Wesson J-frame in their pocket, or they put in a Ruger LCP, or they put in, fill in the blank, a little baby 365. And they're like, oh, I'm so awesome, I'm carrying. Okay. If that's you, that's fine. If you think that's enough and you're satisfied with that, then keep doing what you're doing. if you want to be better, if you want to strive for more, if you realize there are men right now that want to kill you, many of those are training far harder than that, and you want to level up, you want to step up to the plate and not strike out, then I'm here to offer you hopefully some sage advice, some hopefully Christian warrior wisdom here. Again, and none of this is a shall, right? But I would advise you to carry a full-size fighting handgun. If you've listened for a long time, you know I harp on this because it's important, right? That's why I harp on it. That's why I've gone over it year after year, episode after episode. I don't really want to talk about it anymore, but I think it's important because a lot of people still don't. Realize this, and I love handguns, and I have a lot of handgun experience. I'm a state champion pistol shooter. I have more competition wins with a handgun than anything else. I love handgun. I also do a lot of handgun hunting. But I do both those things knowing that the handgun is a poor choice if I could have a long gun. I'm doing it for the challenge. I'm doing it to stay sharp. I'm doing it to push myself. But if I'm getting into a gunfight today, like if I know that, and I have to because somebody's life or, virtue is on the line or whatever, I'm going to bring a long gun, right? Working as a private security contractor, if I can, I like to have a long gun. I'll have a handgun on me always immediately, but I like to have a long gun nearby. When I was a law enforcement officer, whether regular assignment, more specialized assignment, if I'm going to a fight, I want a long gun. If you know you're going into a fight, you take a long gun almost always. The classic, what handgun for home defense? Wrong answer. You're in a home. Have a long gun. It's a way better option. But the point of this is, why do we carry handguns? Because they're convenient. Because it's kind of hard to change a tire with my AR-15 slung around my shoulder. Right? It's kind of hard to go shopping at Walmart with my, with your, Springfield M1A at Port Arms. Right? The normal stuff that we do that's not gunfighting, we can have a handgun on us. A handgun is already a limitation. It is already far less effective, both in shootability and capability, than most long guns. And you could debate whether shotgun or rifle or assault rifle or a full-size, full-powered battle rifle, but anyway, they're all far more effective than a handgun. We have a handgun because we can carry it on us. So you're already limiting yourself. And full-size handguns, unless you get some weird handgun that just doesn't fit you and slices your hand up or something, are almost always going to be more shootable, more controllable. You're going to be able to get more. You're going to be able to generally get your first, second, and third round hits on target quicker with a full-size fighting handgun than a little baby gun. And the smaller, the worse off it is. Now, I'm going to slap some people in the face here, but a Glock 19 is not a full-size fighting handgun. By Glock's own definition, it is a compact. Now, it's better than an LCP, right? It's better than a Glock 43. It's better than a Glock 42 as far as shootability goes, but it's still a compact, full-size fighting handgun. And I talk a lot about platforms and this gun versus that gun and ballistics and all that stuff, but right, pick a full-size fighting handgun and run with it. And if you decide after quite a bit of training it's not the one for you, then switch to something else. But a full-size fighting handgun, right? A SIG 226, a Beretta 92, a 2011. I love all those platforms. If you want to slum it and go with a striker-fired gun, it really doesn't matter. A M17, a Walther PDP, an HK P30, a Smith & Wesson M&P full-size. Pick one of those and run it. And you get the full-size version, right? Not the baby version. You're kind of defeating yourself there. But full-size fighting handguns, like a combat handgun. If you want to level up, carry one of those. And yeah, maybe you're not going to be able to walk around without tucking your shirt. I would suggest you tuck your shirt in anyway, generally. But that's not a shall. That's just kind of a... Anyway, it's not a shall. But, yeah, you're probably not going to be wearing a wife beater and your skinny jeans out in public. I suggest don't wear skinny jeans anyway. I'm going to leave that on the table. But, if you want to level up, wear a pair of pants with belt loops and a belt. Fighting shoes, like footwear you can fight in, hiking, whatever it is, cross trainers, trail runners, good practical shoes, pants with belt loops, a proper belt, and a proper holster carrying your gun on your hip like a man, not pointed at your junk like a Mexican gangster. Carry a full size. If you want to be able to fight with a handgun, you need a fighting handgun. You need to have it in a fighting position. So, your belt with your proper holster, tuck your shirt in, and then just wear a collared shirt over it. A flannel, a nice lightweight, like outdoor shirt that's untucked with a collar over your, tucked in t-shirt or whatever it is. Carry a reload, carry a flashlight, carry a fixed blade knife or a decent fighting pocket knife, a tourniquet, like the ABCs of, concealed carry. I'm not going to rehash that, but, start with that. And then start getting some more realistic training. The number one thing I'm going to say is get a shot timer. Assuming you have the basics of marksmanship down. If you don't worry about the time yet. But once you have your basic fundamentals down, you've got a firm grasp of the fundamentals. A shot timer. If you're serious, like, should I get this gun or that gun? I've got 5 Glocks. Should I get this other Glock that's slightly different? Should I get a Glock 45 because it's slightly different than the Glock 19 I already have? No. Get a shot timer. Get a shot timer. Get a shot timer. If you just want to flirt with a shot timer, get one on your phone. They're free apps that you can download. But if you're running a gun a lot, you're likely to break your phone, and that's going to be more expensive than just buying a shot timer. Of all the money you spend on guns and ammo and stuff, get a shot timer. And then actually look at the duration of actual gunfights, and then realize how quick you generally need to be. Once you can get decent hits at a decent distance, let's say 25 meters, a decent, I would say that's mid-range, not even, I'd prefer you could shoot well farther than that, and you probably can if you practice. You certainly can if you practice, but once you can do that, start doing it for time, because time is important. The other person is trying to kill you, right? If you're actually practicing for real life. A lot of people don't like to think that somebody's actually out there trying to kill them, training to kill them right now. They're Muslims right now. They've been trying to kill us for 1,200 years, and they have been successfully killing Christians for 1,200 years, and they will continue. And they're training, a lot of them harder than you are. Time can be of the essence. When you need a firearm to defend life, it's almost always right now. So learn to get it quick. So get that shot timer, start training for time. Start smoothing out and refining your draw. The next thing, and this is not an exhaustive list, so if you're like, you didn't talk about these are just some steps you can take to level up your E.D.C, right? This is not the exhaustive list. But start incorporating movement. Now, if you live on the East Coast and you have to shoot at an indoor range or a range with a bunch of rules, I feel sorry for you. You're going to have to figure something out. Take it seriously. But movement, right? You may think it's cool if you grew up watching Westerns where like two men walk out in the middle of the street at high noon, wah, 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 and they just stand there and trade shot for shot and just shoot each other. You might think that's romantic, but that's really, really bad tactics. Some of the best advice I ever got in my tactical training over the years was, what do you want your adversary to do to make him easier to kill? Now, whatever that is, you don't do that thing, right? Would you like, if you're trying to kill somebody, would you like them to just stand there and take it? Yes, right? So you probably should not do that thing. You should probably move, because a moving target is harder to kill than a stationary target. So, good, you can get targets, you can get hits on target quickly. Good, now do it moving. You'll often hear this like, get off the X. But however you want to refer to it, you don't have to overcomplicate it. You don't have to throw a bunch of tactical acronym vomit at it. Just move. Practice moving left, moving right, moving back, moving forward, moving at angles, moving at obliques. There is moving and shooting. There is shooting on the move. There is moving into and out of positions. But movement and shooting is an art in and of itself. And not just like kludgily moving along, bumbling around, but doing it with, purpose, surprise, and violence of action. Incorporating those movements and getting hits on target. Obviously, you can incorporate cover, moving to and from cover, but you got to be able to move first. So there's that. Movement. Movement is important. Now, a lot of times in the beginning, a shot timer in and of itself will induce a lot of stress. You'll see somebody that's a decent shooter, and the first time you bring out a shot timer, it's like their brain gets scrambled up and runs out their ears, and because there's a shot timer, they just fall to pieces. Because why? A little bit of stress. Obviously, if you're getting shot at, it's a stressful situation. Take my word for it. But you want to induce stress. The shot timer will induce a little bit of stress, but figure out a way to induce stress. Gunfighting denotes fighting, right? Fighting is physical. You might want to introduce some physicality. I don't care, push-ups, wind sprints, running uphill, but some kind of stress. So you can incorporate all those skills while you're stressed. You can, if you have buddies that are doing this with you, incorporate some more complex thinking forms of shooting. You can do like the card drills where you're like trying to play poker at speed, identifying targets. Somebody will call out, like royal flush, and you got to find, if you have 52 cards taped onto a piece of cardboard, you got to find those and shoot the royal flush as fast as you can, and only shooting the ones that need to get shot, right? So there's stuff like that you can play. There's like the targets with like, I forget exactly what they are, but they're like yellow circle, blue square, red, triangle, and they've got different numbers. And somebody could call out a number and you got to find it. Somebody could call out a color. Somebody could call out a shape or a combination thereof, and you have to shoot that, like thinking and shooting. This is a good thing. One of the guys in my chat that I have for the group, I was talking about, he's teaching a class of thinking. The whole premise was thinking and shooting. It's like that's a good thing I probably haven't talked about in a while, and that probably spurred my thought of this episode. So thanks to Troy for getting my mind thinking about this. So now you've got, if you're doing any of this, you're actually doing it instead of just listening to it. But if you're actually doing it, you've got a decent grasp of the fundamentals. You've got a decent fighting loadout. You've got shooting in real world time, like not just some amorphous, like, maybe it takes me 2 seconds to get a shot off. Well, you might have been dead by then for a second already, so kind of inconsequential. But you're shooting at speed, you're shooting multiple hits, you're shooting on the move, you're shooting while thinking. You're already, if you're doing this, far and above the average concealed carrier that went and got his permit and shot maybe a couple of rounds at a stationary target and or whatever. Goes to an indoor range twice a year and shoots at a stationary target. You're already far and above that. Now don't stop there, obviously. Try and get better. I would really encourage you, either during this time or after that, once you've reached these things, competition. I don't care who says it'll get you killed in the street. What part of competition shooting is bad? The shooting fast or the shooting accurate? Which part of those do you not want? The shooting in complex situations, under time stress, under a bunch of people watching you to give you some stress, with different things like moving targets and varying numbers of targets and things like that. What part of that is bad? I think people that say that don't win competitions. But you might want to consider shooting competitions, and you might want to consider these are not one or the other. Try and do both, right? But pick one first. Getting actual real-world tactical training from somebody that has actual real-world tactical experience. So, and that's a good teacher and a good handgun shooter. But take some actual training, right? Get some skin in the game. Put some time and effort and money into getting some actual training. Again, if you want to level up, if you want to do better, if you want to take this seriously, your protection, the protection of society as a whole, your family, your friends, those, that maybe aren't one of the 2 of the 12 carrying the sword, right? You shall love your neighbor as yourself. One of the things that irks me is people in the tactical bro community or whatever, and maybe they're not Christian, so they have no frame of reference, right? They don't know any better, but they're like, I've got my concealed carry. I'm just going to take care of me and mine. If there's an active shooter, I'm just going to take care of myself and get out of there. Take care of my wife and get out of there. Yeah, well, I guess the heck with love your neighbor as yourself, right? Like, okay, well, there's a 12-year-old girl getting shot, but I'm just going to walk out the door because I can, because the heck with her, right? I got to get home and play my fantasy football league or watch Netflix or whatever I'm going to do. I got to take care of me and mine. Well, okay, what about love your neighbor as yourself? That 12-year-old girl, she can just fend for herself, right? Because to heck with her. That's her problem. No, right? Are you carrying a gun just to care about yourself, or are you carrying your gun to protect? Period. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's going to bring me to a tactical verse of the day. You shall not stand idly by while somebody takes the life of your neighbor. There's a couple more I'll throw in there. If a man sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. And the one I mentioned in the beginning, let he who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. That's the words of Christ in the Gospel of Luke. With that, thank you for listening and have a blessed day.